So as the stock markets are taking a huge hit and as people are dying from the coronavirus within the United States and the world abroad, the left has their own way of reacting to the news that is breaking every single day. Yes, as everything continues to trend towards getting worse, the left is celebrating because they believe that they're able to rewrite the narrative and rewrite the story in order to try and blame Donald Trump. And when you listen to their arguments and you go through the past and all the events that led up to the spread of the coronavirus, their arguments are basically, it's your fault we didn't listen to you. See, the left has this, strange way of thinking in which they believe there are no consequences to their actions. The conservative goes out and warns them, stop doing this, stupid, you're going to cause a problem. The left goes off and goes, no, I want to do this, and if you don't support it, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're a bigot. And then when the shoe drops, they go off and, keep forgetting that the internet exists with all the videos that are available and keep going off and say, no, we're rewriting history. It was all your fault and we were the ones sounding the alarm. I mean, it is amazing how they go. Now, while I've continued to say that the issue with the coronavirus isn't about whether or not it's a threat, it's a matter of how much of a threat is it in reality compared to the panic. Now, as we see, where you live greatly affects what the survival rates are. If you live in a country with an older population that is more susceptible to the virus, yes, the death rate is higher. If you live in a country where there is generally less healthy people to begin with, yes, the death rate is higher. Now, here in the United States, as I've gone through and I've shown in the previous episode, that the death rate still depends on where you live. And despite the quick, effective, and overwhelming response by the Trump administration, just like what we saw with Hurricane Maria with Puerto Rico, where, as conservatives have pointed out many times, while the federal government has a role, and no matter how efficient or effective that they can be, the effectiveness and competency of local government matters. Just like in Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, where Trump had overwhelming quick response, but the incompetence and corruption of the local government, stopped, prevented, and blocked, or just completely incapable of handling or distributing the aid, left all the emergency supplies on tarmacs and in storage houses for up to a year undistributed to the population. We are seeing here that in states that are run by a bunch of left-wing kooks that suffer from mass homeless problem and people defecating in the streets and the sidewalks, that despite conservatives pointing out for years that, hey, your policies are creating a massive problem. If something really big happens, it's going to be a disaster. Guess what? Those are the areas in which the death rates are much higher. And if you take out the state of Washington, the death rate drops significantly. Because the death rate in the states that are run competently with sound policies seem to have very little death rates whatsoever. Now, as I've gone through and I've explained this, and that I've explained that, the threat seems to be minimal, or, not much higher than, other, seasonal, viruses and such, I do need to revise this in one significant way. And that is, I forgot to include the complete stupidity of the general population, and especially of the left wing. And what do I mean by that? Well, the right scoop is reporting that there is a new coronavirus challenge that now has people licking toilet seats and then posting it online. I mean, sometimes I wonder if we are a species that is meant to last and survive, because think about the sheer stupidity of this. People are now licking toilet seats in a challenge brought to you by the same generation that ate Tide Pods. Okay, so now if the coronavirus continues to spread and more people die, what? It's Trump's fault that people are licking toilet seats? And this is how the left is going to promote it. No. It wasn't people licking toilet seats. It was Trump, and being completely and totally ineffective. Now, let's take a look at what had happened. The virus, started in China, right? When the Trump administration found out about it, they implemented a travel ban. Other countries, taking its cue from the American left, denounced it as racist and xenophobic, so they didn't do anything. The virus spread throughout Europe, and due to travel between Europe and the United States before the outbreak really became evident in Europe, the infected people were able to get to the United States. Trump has been talking for years, and conservatives have been talking for years about the dangers of not securing our borders or screening people coming in and out of the country for this very reason. I mean, how many times do we have to prove, the conservatives, right about all the issues on which we sound the alarms about danger. Now, as we go through and we take a look at how the coronavirus, got started, because this is not a virus that initially lends itself to having human infections previously. Well, we can once again thank the left for ignoring the concerns of conservatives and the right wing. So, as the Daily Mail has reported, China's coronavirus did come from bats. Scientists reveal the virus is 96% identical to the one found in the animals and is almost the same as SARS. So, what had happened here? Well, there was a popular trend that came out about bat soup. Yes, take one of the most disease-infected animals that we have, right? Catch them live, dip them into a boiling water. Don't even cook them all the way through. Set them in a bowl, fill that bowl with soup, and then eat soup with a dead, half-cooked bat in it. And then as people were going out saying, hey, this is stupid, this is going to cause a problem, a lot of people could die from this can create a disease, what did the left do? The left came out and said, oh, you're racist, you're bigoted, how dare you judge other cultures? Because the left has also promoted the idea that we need to get away from cows, pigs, and chickens because of climate change, and we may need to think about eating bugs, insects, and other animals. So while we were off saying, hey, this is going to be a problem, the left goes, this is racist and bigoted. And surprise, surprise, what happens? We get the coronavirus that now mutated and spreads to humans. And the left is desperately trying to rewrite the narrative about, why it is that they decided that they were going to go off and ignore all the warnings that the conservatives give about the problems. How many times does this need to happen, people, before you realize that the left is completely insane and stupid? And of course, because, of the way they act and never take responsibility, when they go off and shift the narrative and try to blame, conservatives for their failure to listen to conservatives, the mindless zombies of the left wing end up eating it up, and all of a sudden they go out and they say, oh, it's all the conservatives' fault, it's all the conservatives' fault, and yada, yada, yada. I mean, it is completely sick. Now, as the coronavirus and the toll that it's taken on the economy, goes through, the left is going through, not just in the mainstream media, but online, to try and shift the narrative and try and blame President Trump. For instance, there's a YouTube channel called Secular Talk. He tends to get a lot of views. This is what he has to say.
Whereas here, of course, we have a president who cut funding for the CDC and Health and Human Services and literally fired the pandemic experts in 2018. I wish I was wrong about that. I wish I was lying about that. I'm not.
Actually, you are. And this is one of the problems when you got, a group of people or an entire half of the country trying to push out fake news and fake narratives. So let's actually go through and take a look at the claims as they are trying to go through and shift the blame onto President Trump. And I'm using fact checkers that are left-wing fact checkers that often, are not entirely accurate in their fact checks of conservatives as they try to, hit conservatives. But the fact that left-wing fact checkers are debunking left-wing talking points, goes off and shows you just how wrong and how much of a lie the statements like that is. So for instance, Snopes goes on to fact check, did President Trump cut the CDC budget? And they rate it as a mixture. Of course, it is a complete lie, but what they try to say is the Trump administration proposed 2021 budget that included cuts to the CDC, but what makes it false is that Congress did not approve it. No, what makes it false is the fact that the proposed budget didn't actually reduce funding, didn't actually cut funding. All right, this is one of those things where Washington speak, where they take something that you and I would understand, and then they use a different definition for it. So, for instance, you and I in our budget, let's say we spent $100 on clothing, and we say, hey, we got to cut the clothing budget. So the following month we only spend $75. That's what we consider a budget cut, but that's not what Congress or DC considers a budget cut. For Congress and DC, what they say is, okay, last year we spent $100 on the CDC. Now, we have this deal where we want to automatically increase things 5%. So we want to increase the budget to $105, right? And then the Trump administration comes out and goes, you know what? That's too much of an increase. Let's only increase it 3% to $103, right? Now, the spending has increased in terms of actual dollar amount. But for DC, because they only increased it 3% instead of 5%, they call it a budget cut. And that's how they go off and try and get this claim that Trump, had cut the budget to the CDC or even proposed cutting the budget to the CDC, even though the budget he proposes has more funding in it than the previous year. And this is how the left goes on to manipulate language and go off and try and produce false and fake news. Another thing that they go through here is that they are also trying to say that Trump fires pandemic officials, which they go in short, no, actually the pandemic officials quit and Trump didn't replace them. So what had happened is, the left-wing activists that were part of the pandemic, experts and fishes or pandemic unit, they decided they were going to do a political stunt and they resigned, and claimed it was in protest, and it drummed up a bunch of media narratives, and Trump decided, okay, I'm not going to replace you. Why? Because Trump doesn't believe in lots of bureaucracy. If you notice throughout the Trump administration, what has he done? He has gone through to flatten bureaucracy, cut regulations, reduce red tape, and flatten the organization. And we have seen the benefits of that by faster response times to disasters such as the coronavirus, right? Now, as far as it goes, what have we seen as one of the responses besides, the travel bans and all that limited the spread? Well, Trump in his response and flattening out the organizations and getting rid of unneeded bureaucracies, we already now have the first human trials for the coronavirus vaccine, which begins human testing, which was yesterday, right? So this is the fastest we've ever gone from a new virus outbreak to human trials of a vaccine. Why? Because Trump eliminated a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape, a lot of, rules and regulations that hinder the response. So once again, Trump, having, been in the private sector and knowing that it's the results that matter, went through and was able to reorganize everything. And therefore, we have a faster response than we've ever had to previous outbreaks. It's not like, Obama, who dragged his feet, forever because he was concerned about the political optics of taking swift and immediate actions or doing what was necessary to actually safeguard the American people. Trump said, to hell with whatever the left is going to claim, because the left is going to claim it no matter what. I'm going to go ahead and take immediate and decisive action. But the left because it's an election year, they got to go off and try and politicize and create all these false narratives, because they don't want Trump to get reelected. Your life doesn't matter. The danger to you doesn't matter. They couldn't care less how many of you die, just so long as they're able to try and shift the blame away from the incompetencies of liberalism or how much they've spent trying to, obstruct the response to the coronavirus, right? Because all that matters is the Democrat, elections, the Democrats, being able to go off and, state that they're able to, do something better when their response is, well, we're going to do a lot of what Trump did, only we're not going to, do anything about securing the borders or, preventing people from infected areas getting into the country. Now, we've also seen, that as the left, continues to try and attack, capitalism and all of that, that private companies have been stepping up to the plate in order to help out with the crisis. Such as Amazon, is increasing hiring and increasing pay during the crisis for food delivery services. Yes, so that we can help prevent people from going out in public because we know what the precautions are here. Limit travel, try to avoid contact, and engage in basic hygiene. These things haven't changed, right? So with very little new, coming out about the virus, everybody knowing what to do, it's a matter of actually doing it. And private businesses are stepping up to the plate in order to help, people to not have to leave the house so that we can, limit the spread and the dangers of the disease. These are things that the left really likes to attack for some reason. And the companies that the left likes to attack. And, all I can say is it is a thank God situation that Trump is in control here. I mean, I can't imagine how bad things would be if the Democrats were the ones leading the response to this. But again, they have to try and shift the narrative because they can't have it come out that, they ignored all the warnings. And as far as it goes, when the election comes out and we get to the general election, the odds for Trump are easy. He's going to be able to show a timeline video of him warning about the problems. And, then the left, trying to call him racist and xenophobic. And then, boom, the shoe drops. We have a problem. We're going to be able to see where, as the left attacks everything that Trump does, the left's plan is pretty much to do what Trump did, minus a few of the things that Trump did that helped, prevent the spread. I mean, this is never ending with the left because they live in this fantasy world, right? Where there's no consequences for anything. And the left is going out there and they're trying everything that they can to try and push out as much fake news and fake narratives as possible regarding the coronavirus outbreak. For instance, as the Daily Caller is reporting, media outlets are misquoting President Trump. For instance, President Trump held a press conference and he was asked about respirators and ventilators and all that. And Trump's response was, talking about a phone call he had with the governors where, he was going to, or the federal government was going to do everything he could to help them, but also said, do not wait, for the federal government. If you can get it directly yourself, go ahead and do so. But what the media did is they left out the entire, part about, the federal government being willing, is going to help them, back them, and all of that. And instead, they put out the quote, go get it yourself. Was what they essentially reported in order to make it seem like Trump is hanging the states out to dry, and is risking lives. When Trump was really saying is, hey, we're going to do everything we can to get you the supplies, but do not waste valuable time waiting on the federal government because we don't know, how much we can get, at this particular moment, and we got to divide it up among, the 50 states. Therefore, if you can get a hold of it yourself faster, then go ahead and do that. right? Which is the smart thing to do. That is completely smart. That is the right thing to do. And the left, because they cannot help themselves, misquote that and promote fake news surrounding that. I mean, it is utterly sickening how the left reacts to everything. And getting on to the question of how does the left think that this is going to help them in the general election? I mean, think about this. As the stock market crash, from the outbreak, it's not because of Trump's policies. It was due to a sudden, global pandemic that went out there that led to the crash in the stock market. A pandemic that started in a foreign country. It's not Trump's fault. But Trump's going to be able to see, or show videos about, Bill Maher, praying for a stock market crash and a recession, regardless of how many people it hurts. They're going to be able to point out. That, people like Paul Krugman, celebrate stock market crash because it's going to hurt Trump. Trump is going to be able to go out there and show how much the left has been celebrating and praying for the suffering of other people in order to, affect or influence the outcome of the general election. How do you think that's really going to play in an ad? How do you think that's going to play? Alongside the videos of all the warnings from the conservatives about the problems that the actions and policies of the left wing were creating. And the left wing's response, oh, you're a bigot. But now the left is also, in an attempt to politicize all of this, are trying to use it to advance, various narratives, attack on the Second Amendment, to implement new socialist programs that they want to cement and hope never goes away. But also, they are going off and they are promoting that, because of coronavirus, ICE should immediately release all the illegal immigrants in its custodies, for safety. For safety. Oh, yeah. That's the way to go right there, right? That is how we should be handling the situation. That we should release all the illegal immigrants who will then flee to California, New York, and Chicago. And it will take us years to hunt them down, round them back up and have them set for deportation. Meanwhile, they would be included in the 2020 census and give liberal states additional seats allocation in the House of Representatives and electoral votes in the presidential race. You see, they go on and they twist and they warp every situation because, it's always about never letting a crisis go to waste. And they twist and warp these situations in order to promote left-wing policies that actually increase the dangers and the risk to the American population. And I got another clip, that I'll be showing here in a few moments. But, it really goes through to show you just how twisted, just how warped the left is and how distorted and devoid of reality they are. I mean, it is just completely sick. Now, as we go through and we take a look at, the global spread of coronavirus, the left attacks any attempts to secure the border or enforce immigration laws. So Biden, has come out and said, felon-only deportation plan. Now, what Biden is saying is that if you ignore our immigration laws, come to the country illegally, as long as you don't commit additional crimes, you will be rewarded. We'll let you stay and you'll be able to reap all the benefits of being, a permanent resident within the United States. The problem is illegal immigrants do commit other crimes. How do you think they open bank accounts? How do you think they get a job? What they do is they lie and they have to steal and report fraudulent tax identification numbers. Now, you could say some of them deal in cash, yada, 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 but they still have to, engage in additional crimes in order to live in the United States illegally. And those are violations of federal law, even though states try to undermine, federal law, as much as possible. But let's go through here and, see how the left is able to twist, manipulate, and warp reality of every situation. Because there are plenty of things that are going on besides the coronavirus that is not being covered because of the constant 24-hour, we must raise the panic level as high as possible and blame President Trump because it's his fault that the left did not listen to him. So what else is going on in the world?
This is the sort of story that, considering what's going on in the world, you're probably unlikely to hear much about, but it's a tragedy, and I think we need to acknowledge it. A 19-year-old woman who was pregnant, traveling from Guatemala, wanted to get into the United States so that she could work and send money back to her family. But because there was a border wall, she had to attempt to climb it. And she fell from the border wall and died because of those injuries. In that area, supposedly, before there was a wall, a lot of people crossing from Guatemala specifically would present themselves to Border Patrol. They would come in, they would present themselves, and then hopefully be able to spend some time in the U.S. But now they have to climb over the wall.
Well, I'm sure that the pro-life movement in this country is livid, not only for the poor 19-year-old woman who died, but for the 8-month fetus inside her body who passed away. And right now they're calling for tearing down that wall. Oh, right. No, they're not at all. Couldn't care less. Because I know they don't care about normal human beings, the ones that are actually alive. The idea that they would care about a 19-year-old Guatemalan is unthinkable. There's no way they care about that. But there was a fetus involved, guys. Nope, nothing. Nope. Beloved Donald Trump, thank God he built the wall. And I'd be shocked, honestly, if there wasn't a bunch of right-wingers in this country that saw that news story and celebrated it.
Okay. Now, that is a very disgusting, twisted, and warped, shaping of reality, in order to try and say this. So let's go ahead and take a look at this and, try and explain this. First of all, they completely lied about the idea that this is where they cross the border to present themselves to border agents. No. If that is where people were to cross the borders to present themselves to border agents for entry into the country, it would be a port of entry and there wouldn't be a wall there. Why did we put a wall there? Because that is not a designated entry point into the United States. I mean, let me use this analogy. It's like there's a minefield, right? We pass laws that say, do not cross through this minefield. We put up signs that say, danger, danger, do not cross here, keep out. Someone still decides that they're going to go through and walk through the minefield, and when they step on the mine and boom, they blow up, what do? They blame the person who put up the signs that says, do not cross here, danger, and completely say that the person who ignored all the warnings, or worse, the people who encouraged the person to ignore all the warnings, they're guilt-free. It's the problem. The problem is the people who put up the sign that says, warning, danger, do not cross here. I mean, this is incredibly stupid, how they are going out there and twisting reality. And yet, because it's TYT and they're over-promoted by YouTube with a partnership and funded through, foreign caliphates and, big mega left-wing donors that hate the United States, they're able to go out there and make such stupid claims. And their audience, as mindless as it is, will go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, think about it. We pass a law that says, do not come into the country illegally. This is how you come into the country. You fill out, paperwork to get approval to come to the United States legally, right? We also say, if you are a refugee, which the left is always trying to expand the definition of a refugee, right? So, it was for political and religious persecution. Well, then they go, well, now these are economic refugees. Oh, these are climate refugees. Basically, they've expanded it to say that a refugee is anybody who lives outside of the United States, right? And so we go off and say, if you are a refugee, you must come to these designated ports of entry to seek entry into the United States. Now, why is it that Trump puts up border walls? Well, because we're trying to keep people from entering the country illegally, right? They go, well, this is a place where people, cross regularly. Yes, that's why we put a border wall there. That's why we look at the places where people are illegally crossing the border in masses in violation of the law, and we put up a wall to stop them from breaking the law. We put up a wall to say, hey, this is not where you go to enter the United States. I mean, of course we put the wall where people tend to cross the border illegally, because we're trying to prevent them from crossing the border illegally. I mean, this is not rocket science, right? And so now, instead of going off and taking a look at how the left has encouraged people to violate the law and told them that if they cross the border illegally and get to a state like California, they'll be rewarded. No. That's not to blame. It's a wall. And by the way, the wall was built there before the person even got there. Instead of going around, and going to a port of entry, they decided, oh, I'm just going to try and climb this wall. I mean, do you understand how sick, demented, and warped their, twisting of the facts are, and how they try to shove the blame back onto somebody? I mean, it's like, let me use another analogy. There's a building here. This building was placed here long before you arrived, right? Now, there are sidewalks, and there are signs that say, follow this path to get from where you are to where you want to be. But instead, they go off and go, you know what? I'm not going to take that designated path. I'm just going to climb up the building and climb down the other side, right? And when they lose their grip and fall to their death, what do? They blame the person who built the building rather than the person who failed to follow the instructions of, no, go this way. This is not where you pass. Go this way. This is the designated path. I mean, can you actually, take a look at that clip and with any reason, on any intelligence, say that you actually agree with their assessment that this death was Trump's fault because this person decided to ignore all the signs, break the law, and ignore all the warnings and ignore the part where we say, do not enter here, enter over here. And this is how the left goes on and on all the time. And the fact that people are actually eating that up and going, oh, that makes sense, is frightening, and goes off to show that there are other problems in the country, such as with the education system. A failure in the education system, which, by the way, it seems to be more purposeful, from the left wing to undermine the education system within the United States, so people actually fall for the stupidity that was just promoted there. My God, of course we put up walls where people cross illegally, as part of border enforcement and immigration law enforcement. I'm running out of words, and I'm starting to get to the point where, where the stupidity and insanity of the left, I'm running out of ways to, completely describe it. If it hasn't sunk in by now, how completely stupid the left is, it will never sink in for you. It will never sink in. And just rewatch that clip there of them trying to, go off and say that the border wall was responsible for this person's death, and not the fact that the person ignored all the signs and, all the, rules saying, do not cross here, you must cross over here. But, the media is going to go off and try and, prop up, this view of somehow it's Trump's fault that the woman died for ignoring all the signs, rules, and laws. I mean, the reason we built the wall there was to say, Do not enter here. All right. So in any event, there are additional things that have come out. As you know, there was a debate between Biden and Sanders. And one of the issues that they come up is that they vow to end the U.S.'s energy independence. Now, of course, they didn't phrase it that way, but when you take a look at it, during the Trump administration, the massive increase in energy production has turned the United States around from being dependent on foreign sources of energy to being a net energy exporter, right? So we are not beholden to the whims of other countries, in order to get our energy needs done. Now, another interesting thing regarding this is, they go off and they talk about also re-entering the Paris Climate Accords, which would be a complete disaster for our economy, right? And when you take a look at the Paris Climate Accords, the countries that stayed in the Climate Accord either did nothing or their greenhouse gas emissions have increased. Meanwhile, the United States, which has left the Climate Accord and engaged in smart policies, right, have had the side benefit of decreasing the U.S.'s greenhouse gas emissions and CO2 emissions. So it's interesting they're going off, and attacking Trump for leaving the Paris Climate Accords when doing so has led to actually achieving the results that the Democrats want, while praising the countries that stayed in the Climate Accords whose emissions have gotten worse since then. Because for the Democrats, the outcome isn't the point. It's what you claim your intentions to be that matters. And this is part of the psychological delusion and sickness of the left, where your reasoning is more important than the results. And on the conservative side, we go, well, the results are what matters. Did we actually achieve the goals? All right. And did we achieve the goals ethically? Right? And so we're focused on actual results. But the Democrats, they don't care about results. The results don't matter. All that matters is, did they get their legislation, that increases government power and control over your life passed? What they name things is more important than what the results of those things are. And that's always the case with the left. They never go through and think about the consequences of their actions. They never do, because they never have to face the consequences themselves. They're always able to shift the blame away. Now, as the coronavirus, has spread and people are panicking, this has now created a lot of disruption within the Democrat primaries, where states are now suspending the primary elections, which, when you think about it, the Democrats are able to now use the coronavirus as a way to try and put a pause on the disaster of the Democrats' primary and find a way to regroup, reshift the narrative, and try to find a way to save their primary, because right now they have gotten to the point where they have the two worst candidates. Both are going to be a complete and total disaster in the general election, and it's still shaping up that President Trump will be able to easily, win re-election, especially with how well he has handled the coronavirus, epidemic. And the left, continues to prove that they are totally and completely insane. So it gets to, the whole situation where, the left, it's constantly about the narrative, telling you a story, not the story, just a story, right? And, I don't know, is anything going to change after this? All indications is the left has no intentions of changing. They have no intentions of heeding any future warnings about the problems with the various things that they are doing, the policies and all that. All we see here is that they refuse to learn any lessons. They refuse. And so when, things come out in the future, the right wing is going to warn them, hey, this is going to create a problem. they're going to pass it off as racist and bigoted, and then again, repeat the pattern of blaming conservatives. As conservatives go through and try to secure the border, people that try to ignore all the laws, ignore all the signs, all the do not enter here, enter over here, any death that results from the left wing trying to tell them, no, come here, risk your life, risk your safety, and, risk death. And if you do and succeed, you'll be rewarded. They're going to continue that and then try and blame any death or, injuries or casualties as a result on the Republicans, because we built a wall so that we could prevent people from crossing the border illegally and risking their lives doing so. The left is never going to change, right? But what is apparent is, at this particular point in time, if you are still supporting the Democrats, if you are still identifying as a left wing or a progressive, there's no hope for you. There's no point in you even watching this show, right? There's nothing that I'm going to be able to do that's going to be able to help you see the light, help you, reestablish a connection with reality. There's nothing I can do to help raise your intelligence, right? So, I guess at that particular point, go ahead, keep surrounding yourself in fake news, put as much distance between you and reality. Do whatever you need to do to try and cope with the consequences of your own dumb butt decisions. Right? So that's it for this episode. There were more things that I wanted to get to, but I'll have to, wait until tomorrow. Please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're watching this on BitChute, please don't forget to subscribe. I would greatly appreciate any donations that you want to give me. You can check the links in the description below to help fund this show and keep it going. If you're listening to this in iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts, don't forget to hit subscribe, leave me a rating and review, and I will be back again soon.